Castles are everywhere in Minecraft. Whenever you load into a survival SMP, chances are someone somewhere has already built a massive stone fortress just to flex on you how many hours they've sunk into placing blocks. But here's the thing, I'm pretty bad at building them. They always felt so intimidating cause they're such enormous and complex structures way out of my comfort zone. So for pretty much my entire building journey, I've avoided them. Until today, because in this video I'm finally facing that fear. I want to build a fortress so great that it's worthy of becoming your next dream Minecraft survival base. But before we place a single block, there's one decision that matters more than anything else. Where do we even build it? Because that determines everything. The color palette, the style, the mood, and even how epic the final build feels. And after some searching, I found this seed. It's got towering mountains, a massive lake, and even a cherry blossom biome tying it all together. I think this world has some potential. Now, to make sure I don't completely mess this up, I needed a solid reference. So I jumped onto Pinterest for some ideas and sketched out a rough concept. The idea is simple. A massive fortress perched high above the world, overlooking everything below. And that's when I found these ice mountains. They stretch right up to a cliff that drops off into the sea. And the view from up here, just perfect. But there's a problem. If I'm building a fortress on a mountain, why stop here? Because what's cooler than a fortress just on a mountain? Well, one towering over some massive deadly cliffs. I mean, we don't want to make it too easy for any unwanted visitors, right? So that's where this project really begins. Back in my building world, with a bit of editing magic, we've suddenly got a terrain base ready to go. Now I can start reshaping these mountains for real. That means replacing the ice, carving out huge chunks, and setting up the perfect color palette for later. And to get those rough natural shapes, I'm using a mix of different boulder brushes to really sell the scale. Because this fortress doesn't just need to look powerful, it needs to feel untouchable. Now it may look a bit questionable right now. But trust me, once the colors goes on, this is where everything starts to click. And I also carved in a small pathway winding its way down the mountain, because all those merchants hauling supplies up to your fortress are gonna need some way to get here. And yes, we're just gonna pretend elytras don't exist for this one. Now I know at this stage it's still kind of hard to read what's going on. So let's fix that. Time to add some color and turn this thing from a weird alien blob into an actual mountain. And done. Yeah, that makes a difference. Side by side you can really see how much the terrain comes together. For a base that's going to hold an entire fortress, I'd say this is a pretty solid foundation. And honestly, the view from up here is kind of insane, especially when you got distant horizons enabled. Just imagine it. Standing on the edge of your kingdom watching the sun dip below the horizon, knowing that everything you see is under your control. But as tempting as it is to just sit here and admire the view, we didn't come all this way to just look at mountains. Because now it's finally time to build the fortress. But before placing a single block, I needed a plan. So I sketched out the entire fortress layout. The idea is a massive curved bridge stretching across the gap and physically connecting the two mountains. On each end of the bridge are gonna be tall towers, because let's be honest, a fortress without towers just feels wrong. And right in the center, between those towers, sits the heart of the build, the main structure. But this is a fortress, not a vacation home. So naturally, beneath it, I'm leaving room for defenses. Cannons, mechanisms, anything needed to make sure this place can actually protect itself. And of course, a fortress is gonna need a proper entrance. So I designed a staircase that leads straight into the heart of the build. And I think I came up with the perfect design. It's gonna connect the mountain pathway directly into the fortress. And I also think having all those rounded shapes just work together so nicely. But I'll stop rambling about staircases now. Let's keep building. Now, while looking over the fortress, something still felt off, like it needed one more element to really bring it to life. So naturally, I spent way too much time building a massive water wheel. I'll just slide it into place, and with that, the main fortress structure is complete. Now, with the main shape finally finished, we've reached the most dangerous part of the build: coloring. Because this is where everything can either come together or completely fall apart. And just to make sure this fortress doesn't end up looking like whatever this is, I called in some backup. One of my friends joined me to help me with the coloring and detailing, just to keep me from accidentally destroying the entire build. Alright, let's do this. Now, instead of slapping one flat color across the walls, we decided to tell a bit of a story with it. We've added small cracks, subtle wear and tiny imperfections, not enough to ruin the structure, but just enough to make it feel real. Like this fortress hasn't just been built, it's survived. And sometimes it's those little details that give a build its soul. And every crack tells a story. Was it left behind by an epic battle between rival kingdoms? Or is it simply the result of centuries of neglect and weathering? We'll probably never know, but that mystery, that's what makes it feel alive. And it's overall all those small details that I think make for a good build. So whilst building, we tried to add in as many small details as we could. Of course, still keeping it subtle, not trying to get accused of and I think it's coming together quite nicely. And of course, a build doesn't just have a front, it's also got a backside. So I'm just letting you know it's not gonna be left empty, it's still gonna be fully colored and detailed. Now, since I already mentioned that a fortress should be able to defend itself, I needed some cannons. So I've made a small cannon design based on this reference, which is gonna make a nice addition to my fortress. Alright, it's not very noticeable from far away, but just know they exist. And if there's ever someone bothering you, I've also got the solution for that. I made a few small cages and hung them under the fortress. That way you can just ask them nicely to get in a cage and your problem is solved. Now, if you're going to live inside a fortress, you can't exactly pop out to the nearest village every time you need supplies. So instead, we brought the village to us. We've built a small market inside the castle, consisting of villagers, stalls and all the resources we ever need, safely protected within the fortress walls. And see that villager over there? I think he's trying to tell you something. Hello! Do you want to have this fortress, the world and even me? Well then, check out this website where you can get over 100 custom builds. Now that that's done, it's already time for one of the final parts of this build. Interior. And a fortress like this is gonna need some very nice interior. I mean, you don't want people hiking up the mountain all the way to your fortress, seeing the amazing facade, and then entering the build just to find your so-called epic fortress. It's really just a bunch of empty rooms. So my friend and I got to building. Now, this build looks pretty much done. But of course I can't call this build fully finished yet without at least one tiny organic. And luckily I already had something in mind. While working on this fortress, I'd been building a few smaller side projects in the background, and one of them turned into this statue. And honestly, it's probably one of the best humanoid organics I've ever made. So, after removing the top section, we're left with the main figure, which means it's time to find the perfect place for it to live. And I think I found it. Now it almost looks like the statue is physically holding the two mountains together, like it's been standing here for centuries silently supporting the fortress above. And suddenly, the whole build feels complete. Time for a cinematic. Minecraft. A world built entirely from blocks, where the only real limit is your imagination. You wander across endless lands, scour the ocean for sunken treasure, or descend deep into the earth where danger waits in the shadows. And then, one day, you find it. A place that feels right, a place to stop running and call home. So you place the first block, nothing more than a small shelter. But as days turn into weeks, that shelter begins to change. Walls grow thicker, towers rise higher, until one day you step back and realize you're done. Not because there's nothing left to build, but because this place is filled to the brim with memories. Of adventures taken, of dangers survived, of a life lived, one block at a time. And in a world made of blocks, that's what truly makes a place feel alive. And that's it for today. So, what do you think? How did I do? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments. And a massive thank you goes out to my friend for helping me bring this build together. And also a huge shout out goes to all my patrons. Your support seriously means a lot. So, if you want to get your hands on my builds, definitely consider checking that out. Now, about my next project, I'll give you a small spoiler.